Stop scrolling, because the gesture I'm about to tell you about is so quiet, so simple, that most men overlook it. And that's exactly why it melts a woman's defenses in seconds. If you've ever felt invisible, misunderstood, or replaced, stay with me. And before we go deeper, subscribe to this channel and like this video, because what you're about to hear rewires how women experience you. I'm speaking to you as a psychologist, not to flatter you, but to sharpen you. Women don't fall for noise. They don't surrender emotionally to lines, money, or theatrics. They soften when they feel psychologically safe in the presence of strength. And the gesture that creates this safety isn't touch, gifts, or compliments. It's something far more rare: intentional restraint. The manly gesture that melts a woman is this: your ability to pause, to stop, to hold space without rushing to fix, impress, or dominate the moment. When you pause, when you let silence exist without anxiety, you communicate dominance without aggression. Her nervous system feels it before her mind can explain it. Most men interrupt. They explain too fast. They chase reassurance. They fill every gap with words. And women subconsciously read that as instability. But when you listen fully, when you let her finish, when you take a breath before responding, her body reads you as grounded, safe, centered, different. Here's the psychology you were never taught. A woman's attraction is regulated by her nervous system, not her logic. When she feels rushed, corrected, or emotionally crowded, her system closes. When she feels seen without being invaded, it opens. Your pause tells her you are not threatened by her emotions, that you don't need to control the frame, that you trust yourself. This is why the pause melts her. It allows her to step forward emotionally. It invites her to fill the space you confidently hold. In that moment, she feels feminine without effort, because your restraint creates polarity. If you want to stand out, don't perform, don't chase, master the pause, because the man who can slow the moment controls it. And once a woman feels that calm authority, she never forgets how you made her feel. That memory becomes attraction, trust, and desire over time, growing quietly, deeply, and powerfully, long after louder men fade, because emotional safety anchored in strength is rare, unforgettable, and profoundly magnetic to women who notice everything. Next. Now let me take you deeper, because this gesture only works when it's rooted in something real, not copied behavior. Women are exceptionally sensitive to incongruence. They can feel when a man is performing confidence versus embodying it. The pause I'm describing is not silence born from fear or confusion. It's silence born from self-trust. Here's what happens in her mind when you do this correctly. She speaks. She reveals something. Maybe small, maybe emotional, maybe disorganized. Most men immediately react. They joke it away, analyze it, solve it, or redirect the conversation back to themselves. That reaction tells her one thing: my inner world is too much for you. And the door closes. But when you pause, truly pause, something subtle shifts. Her brain releases tension because it senses regulation. You are not overwhelmed. You are not scrambling for control. You are grounded. That grounding gives her permission to go deeper. She feels held without being trapped. This is why so many men are confused when they say, "I was nice, I listened, I did everything right." Listening is not the same as presence. Presence has weight. Presence has stillness. And stillness is masculine energy at its most refined. From a psychological perspective, this pause activates what we call secure attachment signaling. You are signaling that you can tolerate emotional uncertainty, that you don't need immediate validation, that you are comfortable leading without force. Women are biologically wired to relax into men who demonstrate this because it mirrors safety and competence at a primal level. And here's the uncomfortable truth. This gesture makes insecure men deeply uncomfortable. Silence exposes them. It forces them to confront their fear of not being enough. So they avoid it. They fill the space. They overexplain. They talk themselves out of attraction. When you pause, you're not withdrawing. You're anchoring. You're saying, without words, I'm here, I'm steady, take your time. That unspoken message does more than compliments ever could. This is why a woman will often say, "I don't know why, but I feel calm around you," or "talking to you feels different." That difference is your nervous system leading instead of chasing. Understand this clearly. Attraction isn't created by intensity. It's created by containment. The man who can contain emotion without reacting impulsively becomes the emotional reference point. And once you become that, her attraction doesn't spike and crash. It settles, it deepens, it roots itself in trust. And trust, when paired with polarity, is what turns a moment into a bond, and a bond into something she protects, values, and slowly invests herself into, often without realizing exactly when or how it happened. Now let's address why almost nobody uses this gesture, even after hearing about it. Because it requires you to give up something most men cling to, the need to be chosen in the moment. The pause is an act of emotional self-respect, and self-respect is intimidating to people who are used to chasing validation. When you don't rush to prove yourself, you subtly communicate that your value isn't dependent on her reaction. That alone changes the power dynamic, not in a manipulative way, but in a natural, psychological one. Humans are drawn to what stands on its own. Here's the deeper layer most dating advice ignores. When a woman senses that a man is waiting for her approval, her attraction instinctively drops. Not because she's cruel, but because her subconscious reads that dependence as instability. Evolutionarily, instability feels unsafe. Safety is not about control. It's about predictability and calm. The pause communicates predictability. It says, I know who I am, whether you agree with me or not. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you solid. Think about moments when a woman tests you emotionally. She might challenge you, disagree, or express uncertainty. These are not accidents. They are unconscious checks for emotional leadership. Most men fail them by reacting defensively or trying to win her back instantly. When you pause instead, you pass without effort. That pause gives you space to respond rather than react. And response is where masculinity lives. Reaction is where insecurity leaks out. There's a misconception that masculinity is about decisiveness at all times. In reality, true decisiveness includes knowing when not to rush. A grounded man doesn't fear silence because he knows silence doesn't diminish him. This is also why this gesture increases long-term attraction, not just initial interest. Anyone can create sparks. Very few can create safety. And women don't commit to sparks. They commit to safety that still feels alive. When you pause, you allow her emotions to exist without trying to manage them. That makes her feel respected, not handled. The difference is massive. One creates resistance, the other creates surrender. And surrender here doesn't mean weakness. It means trust. It means she feels she can lean without losing herself. That feeling is rare, and rarity creates value. So if you want to be the man she opens up to, the man she remembers, the man she feels drawn back to even when she can't explain why, stop chasing connection, start holding it. Because the man who can stay centered in the presence of emotion becomes the calm in her chaos. And once a woman associates you with calm strength, she doesn't just feel attraction, she feels relief. And relief is one of the strongest emotional bonds a human being can form, especially when it comes from a man who knows exactly when to speak and when not to. Now let me make this practical, because understanding the psychology means nothing if you don't live it in real moments. The pause isn't about staying silent forever. It's about timing, tone, and intention. And this is where most men get it wrong. Imagine she shares something vulnerable. Maybe she's frustrated, unsure, or emotional. Your instinct might be to reassure her immediately, to tell her everything will be okay, to offer solutions. That instinct comes from a good place, but it short-circuits attraction. It moves you into the role of fixer, not leader. When you pause instead, even for 2 or 3 seconds, you send a powerful signal. You're not dismissing her. You're processing. That brief space allows her to feel heard on a deeper level than words ever could. Then, when you speak slowly. You choose fewer words. You reflect rather than rescue. Something as simple as acknowledging her experience without correcting it creates connection. This is not about techniques, it's about presence. Here's the key distinction. A weak pause feels empty. A strong pause feels full. The difference is your internal state. If your mind is racing, the silence will feel awkward. If you're grounded, the silence will feel intentional. Women can feel that instantly. This is why developing inner stability matters more than memorizing lines. You can't fake nervous system regulation. regulation. You either have it or you don't. And when you do, it shows up as calm, measured responses. Another moment this gesture matters is during conflict or tension. When emotions rise, most men escalate or withdraw completely. Both break trust. The pause allows you to stay engaged without being reactive. You're present, but not consumed. This teaches her something powerful. Emotions don't scare you. Disagreement doesn't destabilize you. You don't need to win every moment to feel secure. That's leadership. And here's something few men realize. When you pause during tension, she often softens first. Not because you dominate, but because you regulate the emotional temperature. Her system mirrors yours. Over time, this builds a dynamic where she feels safe bringing her full self to you, not her polished version, her real one. And real intimacy only happens when a woman feels she won't be overwhelmed, judged, or abandoned for expressing herself. So this gesture is not loud. It won't get applause. It won't impress insecure people, but it will create depth. And depth is where attraction matures into attachment. Because the man who can slow the moment teaches a woman, without words, that she doesn't have to fight for space, that she can rest emotionally. And when a woman rests emotionally with a man, she begins to associate him with home, not chaos. And that association is one of the most powerful forces in human bonding, especially in romantic relationships where safety and desire must coexist. Now let's confront the fear underneath all of this, because if you don't address it, you'll never fully use this gesture. The fear is simple. If I don't act fast, I'll lose her. That belief drives almost every self-sabotaging move men make in dating and relationships. Here's the psychological truth. You don't lose women by slowing down. You lose them by showing that you don't trust yourself to hold the moment. Urgency signals scarcity. Calm signals abundance. When you rush, you communicate that you're afraid the connection can disappear at any second. And that fear transfers to her nervous system. She starts to feel unsettled, even if she can't explain why. But when you pause, you communicate something entirely different. You signal that the connection can breathe, that you're not afraid of silence, distance, or uncertainty, that you understand attraction doesn't need to be forced. This is why men who pause often feel like they're doing less, but getting more. Women begin to lean in. They ask questions. They seek reassurance from you instead of the other way around. Not because you manipulated anything, but because your steadiness invites investment. There's also a deeper masculine lesson here. The pause forces you to stay with your own emotions instead of outsourcing regulation to her response. You're no longer dependent on her mood to feel okay. That internal independence is felt as strength. And strength, in psychological terms, is the ability to remain stable under emotional pressure. Anyone can be confident when things are smooth. Very few can stay grounded when there's uncertainty. Women notice this, especially as they mature, especially if they've been with reactive or emotionally volatile men before. Your pause stands out because it's rare. And here's something important. This gesture doesn't make you passive. It makes you deliberate. When you do speak, your words carry more weight because they're not rushed, they're chosen. Over time, she begins to trust your timing. She feels that when you say something, it matters. That builds credibility, and credibility builds attraction that lasts beyond the honeymoon phase. So if you've been trying harder and feeling like it's pushing women away, consider doing less, but with more intention. Consider slowing your responses. Consider letting moments land. Because the man who isn't afraid of losing a woman becomes the man women are afraid of losing. Not out of insecurity, but out of respect. And respect is the foundation of desire that doesn't fade. It's what keeps attraction alive when novelty wears off. It's what turns chemistry into commitment. The pause teaches her that you're not desperate for connection. You're capable of it. And that distinction changes everything, because capability is attractive in a way neediness never will be, no matter how well it's disguised. Now let me show you what happens internally for a woman when this gesture becomes consistent. At first, she notices it as calm, then as reliability, then quietly, as desire that doesn't burn out. This is the stage most men never reach because they confuse excitement with attraction. Here's the psychological shift. When a woman experiences a man who doesn't emotionally chase her, her subconscious begins to orient toward him. She starts checking in. She wonders what he's thinking, not because he's distant, but because he's centered. Her mind fills the space you don't crowd. This is crucial. Attraction deepens in the space between stimuli. When everything is immediate, predictable, and explained, there's no room for emotional curiosity. Your pause creates that room. Over time, she begins to feel emotionally regulated around you. Her stress drops, her defensiveness softens, she feels more herself. And here's the part most men don't understand. A woman doesn't bond to how exciting you are. She bonds to how she feels about herself when she's with you. If she feels calmer, clearer, and more grounded around you, her attachment strengthens. That's not romance advice, that's attachment psychology. This is also why this gesture changes how she handles conflict with you. When tension arises, she remembers that you don't escalate. That memory alone reduces her reactivity. She feels safer expressing disagreement because she trusts you won't collapse or explode. That trust becomes emotional intimacy. And emotional intimacy is what sustains desire over time. Not novelty, not constant stimulation, but the sense that you are emotionally durable. Many men fear that slowing down will make them boring. In reality, emotional volatility is exhausting. Calm confidence is magnetic because it's rare and stabilizing. And here's something subtle but powerful. When you pause, you give her dignity. You don't rush her feelings. You don't talk over her experience. You don't shrink yourself to be liked. You meet her as an equal. That equality creates polarity, not removes it. Because polarity isn't about dominance, it's about contrast. Your steadiness contrasts her emotional flow in a way that feels complementary, not competitive. This is why women often say, "I feel like I can be myself around you." What they're really saying is, "You don't make me anxious." And a man who reduces anxiety without reducing attraction is extremely rare. So when you wonder why some men are remembered long after relationships end, it's not because they were perfect. It's because they were emotionally safe without being emotionally weak. The pause is how that safety is communicated. Quietly, consistently, without announcement. And once a woman associates you with emotional safety that still feels masculine, she doesn't just like you, she bonds to you. Because her nervous system has learned that with you, she can breathe. Now let me leave you with the truth most men never hear, because it doesn't sell ego, it builds mastery. This gesture isn't about women at all. It's about who you become when you no longer need to rush life to feel validated. The pause changes how you move through the world. You stop reacting, you start choosing, you stop performing masculinity and start embodying it. And women are not attracted to the performance, they're drawn to the embodiment. When you master this, you don't just melt women. You respect yourself more. You don't speak to fill silence. You don't pursue people who are unsure about you. You don't panic when things feel uncertain. You remain grounded because your worth is no longer on trial. This is why the pause is so rare. It demands emotional discipline. It requires you to tolerate discomfort without numbing it or escaping it. And that skill separates men who drift through relationships from men who lead within them. Here's the final psychological insight. The man who can pause has internal authority. He doesn't need to control outcomes because he trusts his presence. That trust is felt by everyone around him, not just women. And when a woman encounters a man like this, something happens. She doesn't feel chased, she doesn't feel pressured, she feels chosen because you are choosing yourself first. That's the paradox. The more at ease you are with yourself, the more at ease she becomes with you. The more centered you are, the more she orbits naturally, not out of fear of losing you, but out of desire to be close to what feels solid. So don't rush this. Practice it. In conversations, in conflict, in silence. Let your nervous system lead before your mouth does, because the man who can hold space without demanding anything becomes the man people open up to, trust, and remember. And that is the man women don't just date. That is the man they bond to. If this changed how you see attraction, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and carry this with you, not as a trick, but as a standard, because the strongest gesture you can make isn't loud, flashy, or obvious. It's your ability to remain calm, present, and unshaken when everyone else is rushing to be chosen.